Foolish mortals. You thought us defeated so easily. The Sand Lane are the Lich King's immortal soldiers. Now, you shall face their might combined!
Blood Prince Council is the first boss in the Blood Wing. This encounter contains 3 bosses, namely Keleseth, Valona, and Taldaram. The 3 of them shares the same HP, but only one of them can be damaged at a time, and each bosses have unique abilities, which becomes empowered when they become targetable, which means you need at least 2 to 3 tanks for this fight. One major mechanic in heroic mode is Shadow Prison. It is a stacking debuff that deals damage every time a player moves and/or jump, which means everyone should minimize their movement and avoid unnecessary walking and/or running around in the room. If you have stacks, you can just stand and wait for the debuff to disappear. The key here is just positioning. These are the general idea on where to position depending on your role. At the center, marked with a green circle, is reserved for the healers. No any kind of DPS will enter this area unless you know what you are doing. Outside the circle, marked with the red, is where the ranged DPS and those people in charge with the kinetic bombs will position. At the stage, marked with the blue, is where the melee DPS will stand and spread if the boss will cast Empowered Shock Vortex. Lastly, at the stairs, marked with the yellow, is where the bosses will be positioned by the tanks. Another mechanic is Kinetic Bomb. Throughout the fight, 3 kinetic bombs will randomly spawn in the entire room from the ceiling, for which ranged DPS should damage them with an instant damage ability, excluding damage over time, and should avoid them from reaching the ground, because everyone will be knocked back and will add more stacks in Shadow Prison. Hunters and Unholy DKs are the preferred class to do the kinetics throughout the fight. This time I'll discuss each of the bosses. First will be Valona.
Naxanar was merely a setback. With the power of the orb, Valona will have his vengeance!
He is the middle boss and the first to become targetable. His ability is Shock Vortex. He creates a random vortex on the floor of the room, for which a few seconds everyone near the vortex will be knocked back. But whenever he becomes empowered, he will cast Empowered Shock Vortex, which creates a vortex on every player, knocking back everyone who are close to each other. The tactics here is that Warlock should place Curse of Tongues on him before he casts Empowered Shock Vortex to give everyone enough time to spread from each other. Melees should run towards the stage, while healers should just stand in the middle of the room and stay apart from each other to avoid knockback, and also ranged DPS should stay away from the middle where the healers are standing. The second boss will be Taldaram.
Tremble before Taldaram, mortals, for the power of the orb flows through me.
He is the boss in the right side of the stage. His ability is Conjure Ball of Flames, which he hurls random fireballs to their aid, but this can be avoided by letting the tank face him towards the stage instead of the raid. But when he becomes empowered, he does Conjured Empowered Ball of Flames, which targets a single player, dealing a huge area damage when it reaches. To counter this, targeted players needs to run away from Taldaram when he starts casting, and everyone who are between Taldaram and the target will soak the fireball, which will decrease the size and damage when it reaches the target. The last boss is Keleseth.
Such wondrous power! The dark Fallen Orb has made me invincible!
He is the boss in the left. This boss is more of a tank play. This boss will be casting Shadowlands to the target, which is manageable, but when he becomes empowered, Shadowlands can deal a huge amount of shadow damage, which can one-shot players including tanks. But this can be countered by taunting Dark Nucleuses, which spawns randomly in the room, which gives you a debuff called Shadow Resonance, which gives you a stacking shadow resistance. In order to survive the empowered Keleseth, the tanks need at least 4 to 5 Dark Nucleus, or you will get one shot. And also, for the DPS, you should not do AoE damage, or plainly, do not kill the Dark Nucleus if you want the tank to survive. Preferred tank here are DKs, because they have Death Grip and Icy Touch, and also Warriors since you have Vigilance, which means you can have unlimited taunts for the Dark Nucleus. Overall, the fight requires you to minimize your movement as much as possible because of the Shadow Prison. So what we do is that melee should stay on the stage, healers should be in the middle of the room, and the ranged DPS should be outside the circle in the middle of the room where the healers are. And remember, all the bosses requires you to move, so make sure you move wisely and not recklessly, while hunters and unholy DKs can command their pet to camp the kinetics from reaching the ground, because a falling kinetic bomb is next to a raid wipe. However, if you know where to position for each of the bosses, you can easily avoid all the mechanics and burn down the boss.
Okay. Sige lang. Mga range, tumulong na lang kayo sa kinetic. Taldaram.
Excuse me, nasa likod mo na kinetic ah. Walang nagpapantay. Malayo ako.
Tapos na to. Unti na lang. Unti na lang.
Naglalagaw.
Commanding shot ako. Tulong na lang kayo guys.
Sa'yo na yun, Gina, yung kinetic na yun.
Bumi din. Heal niya
Ping
si
shot.
Shadow, please move. Jack, may vortex. Moonkin, move. Matatamaan ka. Never mind. Utang ina mo.
3%.
Bahala na ulit. Layo ah.
3%.
Ang nakakainis. Vortex ng vortex. Putang ina mo.
Lumapit pa talaga.
Kanina ka pa. Fuck you.
My queen! They...
Ang inang vortex ng putang inang...
Tapos.
And please don't forget to like and subscribe.